Hi, I'm Elaine Harding. Welcome to my blog .stampwithelaine.com. Today's project is this one. It's a box that holds 4x4 inch cards. I won't show you how to make the cards because it will take too long. I use the needle and thread bundle, and this is the stamp set. It's photopolymer and it's a distinctive stamp set as well. It has a coordinating set of dies called the Needlepoint Elements Framelits. And what I love about this set is that it's got the label die that goes with it, which fits into the sentiments here. And there are also 4 embossing dies. I don't know how well you can see it, but there's this floral one. This is a swirly one, and a cross-stitch one, and one that frames the sentiment down here, but it doesn't actually cut out the sentiment, it's just embossed. Also coordinates with the pretty label punch, so that you can then punch that out as well. I've got a sample of it here on this card. These 2 dies will cut out elements like this, and this one cuts out this leaf section here. You can also cut out the image here, I guess, the stamped image. There are dies to cut out the stamped flowers and also the leaf here. This one cuts out the triplet of flowers here, which is all on the one stamp and which you can die cut with just one pass through the big shot. The other stamped image is the butterfly, and this will coordinate with the butterfly duet punch that will go in there. I've made some for this card here. We'll go back and show you the cards I made with the needle and thread stamp set at the end of the video, but we'll crack on and gather the supplies for making the box. I'm using the Needlepoint Nook DSP. There are 6 double-sided designs. Now these 2 look very similar, but in fact they are different, because one has a old olive background and the other has a poppy parade background. I'll flip it over so you can see. Now I'll run through a tip on how I made my 4x4 inch card. In Europe, the A4 sheets measure 8 1/4 inches by 11 3/4 inches. So what I did was cut 1/4 inch off so that my cards were all 8 inches. Then I turned it on its side and I cut at 4 inches, 4 inches, and then this strip is only 3 3/4 inches, but I use those as mats. So 3 3/4 inches, 3 3/4 inches. And this one you could use to stamp a label or something, a sentiment. Then you just score it at 4 inches. So you get 2 cards out of an A4 sheet. And these can act as mats. Unfortunately, Stampin' Up don't make envelopes to fit 4x4 inch cards, so I've had to make my own. So here's another tip. Just use standard very vanilla cardstock. Cut it at 6 7/8 inches. You need a 6 7/8 inch square, so in metric that would be 17.5 by 17.5 centimeters. You need your envelope punch board and line it up at the 3 1/2 inch mark, and then you just only need the one measurement once. The rest of the time, there's the beak, and you line up your score lines against that beak. Butt up your scoring tool and follow the groove, which scores diagonally, and then you rotate your cardstock anti-clockwise and line up this score line along the beak here. punch and score again. Punch, score, punch and score. At the top of your envelope punch board there is a corner rounder on the back which is integral to the punch board, and all you have to do is just insert your cardstock on there and then round off the corners. Crease your score lines and then fold the two sides, then fold the third side up to adhere it. I ran some Tombow multi-purpose adhesive on here, left it to dry so that I would have a resealable envelope. This acts like a post-it note and it will seal it down, but it will be repositionable. On to the box base. My box base is 8 1/4 inches by 8 1/4 inches. Bring in my Simply Scored tool and I score at 1 3/4 inches on all 4 sides. Now I need to cut the bit for the lid of the box, and I want it to be a 1/16 of an inch larger than the box. So if the box was 8 1/4 inches, then this would have to be 8 5/16 of an inch to allow it tolerance for the box base. So 5/16 of an inch. Score that at 1 3/4 inches as well. Now I'll use the larger end of the stylus because I'm scoring on designer series paper, and that paper is lighter, so you don't want it to tear. These are all the colours listed in the designer series paper: Balmy Blue, Berry Burst, Blushing Bride, Crushed Curry, Flirty Flamingo, Highland Heather, Mossy Meadow, Night of Navy, Old Olive, Petal Pink, Poppy Parade or Tranquil Tide. Depending on which designer series paper you pick, then you pick a coordinating cardstock for the box lining. I've cut mine using this pattern, so I've chosen Petal Pink to line my box with. You need a piece that's 4 3/4 inches by 4 3/4 inches for the inside of the box lid. In metric, that is 12.1 by 12.1 centimeters. Then you need 4 pieces to line the box sides, and this measures 1 5/8 inches by 4 3/4 inches. In metric, that will be 4.1 centimeters by 12.1 centimeters. Grab some Very Vanilla to stamp my flowers with and die cut them. Old Olive square, cut at 3.5 by 3.5 inches, which is approximately 9 centimeters square. For the layer on top with the embossed image, that will be 3 3/8 inches by 3 3/8 inches, which is roughly about 8.5 centimeters. Chosen this pattern, so the inks I'm using are Crushed Curry, Old Olive and Petal Pink. A sponge dauber, Petal Pink and Whisper White ribbon and rhinestones, and the Big Shot and magnetic platform. Reinforce the score lines on my box base. You cut straight up on the inside of that score line and make a wedge for the outer edges on the small flaps. Repeat on all 4 sides. Double-sided tape on all the 4 corners. Remove the tape. Assemble the box. We'll set the box base aside and start with the lid. Now we've already scored the DSP, so let's reinforce that first. I want to cut this bit on the inside straight, but then make a notch for the smaller tabs. So straight up on the inside here, notch it on the end. Rotate it 180 degrees. Designer series paper is quite flimsy. I want the pretty paper to show, so I'm going to reinforce the box. So I'm putting these petal pink liners in. So add some adhesive. On the sides where the flaps join, like this, you glue this last. So let's glue the two sides first. Now we want to glue the sides. I need to put some adhesive on here. Fold it back. And I want to put it on my box lid and wrap it round and close it. Now I'm going to glue this to the inside of the box. Now I can punch my finger holes, so I'll just do it by eye with my 1-inch circle punch and roughly find the middle. Okay, I put a tiny bit of glue there, find the centre here and glue that onto the edge. That will be my guide to punch out the other finger hole, exactly the same size. Now for a bit of stamping. Now I want my cardstock and my die to go in this way, so I'll stamp the leaves this way. In Old Olive, I need a pad as a cushion because these are photopolymer stamps and there's no cushion on the underside. Crushed curry, another in crushed curry. I've done my stamping, so now it's time to do some die cutting. I need my magnetic platform, base cutting plate, cardstock and the dies. I'll be using this one for the leaves, that one for the flowers, this one for this flower. And then there's this piece which is the petal pink square for embossing with this die. Pop the top cutting plate on and I'll run that through the Big Shot off camera as well. So there are my die cut pieces. I'm going to set that aside for the moment, and this is my emboss piece. So I'm going to do a bit of distressing the edges to rough up the edges, and I'll just use the blade of the scissors. If you've been with Stampin' Up as long as I have, do you remember the distressing tool we used to have? Well, Stampin' Up has retired it, but you can still distress with using the edge of your scissors, like so. Horror of horrors. Shall I crumple it up? So crumple that up to give it the distressed look. To sponge the edges. I'm going to stamp the For You in petal pink. And I'll just trim that at 1/2 inch. Just cut it with my scissors. And sponge that as well. I've put some double-sided tape on there, and I'll just stick this flower on. Now when you come to putting it on, there is curvature on here on the stamps so that it will fit the flower exactly. A glue dot on there and stick that here. And put some dimensionals on the back of this, the sentiment. And I really am undecided about whether or not to have a bow. I did try and tie a bow with this petal ribbon. It's really soft and quite malleable, but it's so thick that there's nowhere to put it really. Have a bow or not have a bow? What do you think? With bow, without bow? This just seems out of place. Without bow, I think. Adhesive on the back of this. Just doesn't look right, does it? Without the bow, or shall I put the bow there? Okay, let's put the bow there. Then lastly, I'll just stick a rhinestone in the middle of that flower. Now, I promised to show you some of the cards I made using the needle and thread. This is just some simple stamping. That's with the embossed label and punched out with the pretty label punch, and also die cutting the little elements from the die set. This one actually opens like that. It's a tri-fold card, or is it a two-fold card? This one uses the butterfly punch, and I've punched out the butterflies from the butterfly duet punch. Here I'm using the label, more simple stamping, and that's the sentiment in full. And on this one I've done it so that part of it is down the bottom and part of it is on the side. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll be back next week with more inspiration. Thanks for joining me today. Bye!